Good evening, MRV.
Good evening, sir.
Welcome back. Uh, I will not take the pain of or the pleasure of introducing you once again. Our viewers have already known you by virtue of your previous discussion with us, Manthan with us. Uh, we discussed about economy in general, but today I think it's time that we talk about employment in specific. One of the most important elements of economy, one which provides succor to the people uh, to survive, to live happily, wellness, everything is directly connected to employment, not indirectly connected to employment, but directly connected to employment. So it's a good time to think that now, apart from whatever has happened in the recent past, for the last 1.5 years, or maybe a little more than that, since February 2020, we have had states of COVID, its after effects, and the tremendous pain uh, and trauma that the society has undergone. Apart from that, let's try to first look at how things have shaped up for the nation in this century. Now we are 2 decades through in this century, and we are in the third decade of this century. So we need to evaluate the progress that India has made in this decade in terms of employment. What was the employment scenario prior to 2000, and how things have changed in the current century? MR.
See, if you look at it, you are asking me on three different buckets. One is probably a contemporaneous issue regarding employment. One is the 100-year evolution of employment data. And peppered by in between one which will be somewhere you are using a ballpark of 2000 AD, 20 years back, coinciding probably with the computer or the internet boom, as we call it. Now, traditionally, if you look at it, the last 100 years, whatever be the technological prowess or technology that has come in all sorts of manufacturing, human intervention has been very decisive, and human intervention has been always there, and technology has absorbed any amount of surplus labor. But unfortunately, today we are seeing a very peculiar scenario of jobless growth. The last 10-15 years have been characterized by what we call as jobless growth. Now, I would urge each one of your viewer to read a book by Dan Brown titled Origin. Now, in Origin, Dan Brown looks at a very futuristic scenario. And when he looks at a future scenario, don't think that it is 100, 200 years down the line. He talks about 3, 4 years, 5 years down the line, wherein each one of us will be connected to a computer. And that computer will be doing more or less the errands that we are normally associated by doing for ourselves. Like, for instance, as I'm talking to you, I could tell my computer to book a ticket from me from Delhi to, say, Calcutta. And it will throw up on what day, what is the seat you want, and it will tell me whether the flight is booked, fully booked, what is the best possible fare, and also draw the boarding pass, use my credit card, do everything. Like your Alexa, which operates on your household electronic gadgets, like switching on your AC or say putting on your exhaust, switching off your exhaust, whatever be it. We are looking at a scenario where your command will be done faithfully by these type of electronic or computer interventions. There are factories now. You won't believe that automobile factories have been built where there is not even a single bulb. Everything is robotized and automized. And the only human intervention is in the form of a security outside the factory. The biggest of cars are being assembled, completely robotized. But what will happen to human beings? What will happen to, as you said, employment creates that amount of succor and it solves so much of problems. And mostly, in my view, employment is the biggest stumbling block from terrorism. Idle mind will be devil's workshop. Now, what will be the future? How it will unfold? I'm not going to indulge in any crystal ball gazing and say this is the definitive way it looks like it. I was reading one article by Isaac Asimov, and it was a compulsory article in my class 12. I'm going back 30, 40 years. In that, Isaac Asimov says every technological jump for mankind has brought in something good, has brought in something bad. He begins with fire and he ends with nuclear energy. In 80s, this was written somewhere in the early 80s. So you have fire to nuclear energy, good has happened, bad has happened. Now you have come to the so-called internet revolution, to the computer revolution, to the robotic revolution, to probably you have the Alexa revolution, wherein your secretary will be somebody who will be hooked onto your glasses, and there will be something that mic which will be linked, and you don't even have to have an extra gadget. You just have to look at order through your glasses, and that will be carried out. So employment generation, sir, mathematically will go down. But in my view, it will also spawn a new generation of employment opportunities like big data analysis, like robotic manufacturing, like artificial intelligence. Nowadays, they are now telling me that the days of lawyers is all over. There are softwares which will throw, once you give a problem or an algorithm that is being developed, that will throw up case laws and judgments from various places, and you have to only argue them. I wish life were so binary. Life is not binary. At best, a computer can read up to binary. Life is 100 different shades of gray in between 0 and 1. So there will be opportunities, but how it will manifest, I don't know. But there will be opportunities. Yes, mundane tasks. For example, you will not get somebody to sweep your house. That will be done by a robot. But if you want to book your tickets, you can talk to your personal computer and it will dictate to it. But if you want to do something more like research on, say, cancer, the computer or the machine will aid you up to a point. You will have to then have your own ingenuity to carry it forward. So I see less of mundane tasks and more of intelligent tasks opening up. Artificial intelligence, programming for artificial intelligence. How do you write laws for robots? And this robot, if it goes berserk and kills you, who is responsible? The machine maker or the machine operator? How do you deal with these type of things? So these are going to be the new laws that are going to stare at us. And when I say law, I'm being a lawyer, I'm probably partial. You must excuse me for that. But I'm saying that there will be enormous answers to these questions as we progress. Probably we don't have an answer at this point in time, but I see that employment will also have newer avenues of generation.
Okay. Fair enough. I understand your perspective. But if you look at these last 2 decades, in which all areas do you think the employment and the employment generation both have come down drastically, which are the areas you think this has happened?
Uh, Sir, I will tell you, liberalization since 91 was supposed to be throwing up enormous opportunities on manufacturing. Now, when we embarked on liberalization and adopted the new economic policies, we were fondly hoping that the share of manufacturing, especially industry, what we call a hardcore manufacture, must go from 15% to 20-25%. But for the last 3 decades, manufacturing has been at a stubborn 15%. That is our biggest problem. Why is it after almost a generation, and we have done all sorts of reforms, labor reforms, capital market reforms, we have economic reforms, we have tax reforms. We tried every single reform. Our economy has gone up. We were, say, probably $300 billion 30 years back. And we are now $3 trillion. We have grown big time. But we have not, our share of manufacturing has not gone up. In fact, Manmohan Singh in the year 2011 said in 10 years, we must double from 15-16% to 30%, 33%. Actually, after this government has taken over in 2014, the share of manufacturing is dropped from 17% to 15%. Actually, we have lost 2%. Why is it we are losing? The 3-4 reasons why we are losing on manufacturing. One, probably as genetically we are not suited for a disciplined work. We have flashes of brilliance in ourselves. But unlike the Chinese who will work for 18 hours a day or 16 hours a day, we can think for 18 hours or 16 hours a day, but we are not suited to do mundane, repeated tasks for 18 hours a day or 16 hours a day. I think there is a lack of, you may call it indiscipline, or you may say we are not suited for it, whichever way. That is point number one. Point number two, China in 1995 actually devalued its yuan. And then after the East Asian crisis, Korea, Thailand, Japan, Indonesia, all these countries devalued their currency. Previously, it was believed that a devalued currency was a sharp, a curse. But these countries realized that there is a virtue in a devalued currency. And they started exporting more. And led by China, they found that their products can be manufactured in China or manufactured in East Asia and exported and consumed elsewhere. So this is how they leverage their weak currency. The third one is probably, again, these are all causes that have not been studied. English education does not lead to manufacturing. If you don't read, who are your manufacturing giants? They are Germany, they are Japan, they are South Korea. And all these countries don't read English. English is not their, the language of communication. Probably if we shift to Hindi or Kannada or Bengali or Tamil, we will have more of manufacturing. In fact, the best of our educated children only want to become employed in various companies as general managers or CEOs and CFOs. The hardcore manufacturing is not with those who do IIT or do CA or law. The hardcore manufacturing still is people who do ordinary Indians who may be graduates, who may not even be graduates. So these are points that we need to have a manufacturing policy. And we don't have a national manufacturing strategy. I will give you a glaring example of this. The biggest employment generator would be two major industries. One is automobile, one is, of course, textile. Leave alone automobile, because automobile is becoming more and more automated. So it is less of a spinning employment generator than, say, textiles. Now, textiles, You are from Bengal and you would know this, that today for India to catch up with Bangladesh is going to be a tall task. I don't think so. We are going to catch up with Bangladesh in textiles. If we go to Philippines, if we go to Indonesia, you go to Thailand, each one of them have become some sort of a competitor to India in textiles. Now, what China exports in a year in textiles, we export in the aggregate of all goods put together. So you can see this. We can never catch with China. We can probably do something to catch up with Bangladesh in the next 10 years. Now, if we lose to Bangladesh in a cricket match, there will be a national mourning. But when we lose to Bangladesh in a textile match, no one is bothered about it. Now, if you want to generate employment, and all of us cannot be software engineers, all of us cannot be writing programs in Java or in Python. We are people who, there will be different segment of people, and we have to generate manufacturing. We have to give that trust to manufacturing. Somewhere down the line, we realized, or we have not yet realized, I would put it, we have not yet realized that manufacturing generates employment. So manufacturing requires some extra protection to do it, whether it is in the form of a weaker currency, whether it is in the form of a higher customs duty, or whether in forms of a tax break, or whether in form of labor reforms. I do not know exactly what is it which is hitting it, but if you ask my personal opinion, I would say all these factors in parts are affecting our manufacturing. And unless we say that textiles will be our priority, and when we say textiles are our priority, we have a textile ministry. We have textile ministers who are all well-intended personalities. But tell me the contribution in the last 20 years, 30 years. That we are second to Bangladesh. Now, employment cannot be diverse from industry. Tourism. Now, a place like Mylapore has much more to show to the world than, say, Singapore. But Singapore has much more tourists and visitors than, say, India on an annual basis. Now, tourism is some sort of an industry. Where is the training for people? Do we have people who can talk fluently with the Japanese? We have people who have no other job, who masquerade with broken English and are usually touts and charlatans who are actually giving the picture of India to the outsiders. Why can't the tourist ministry say, let me say that I'm coming to Dakshineshwar. That Dakshineshwar has something more to offer to a Tamilian. Yeah, Swami Vivekananda is as much part of South India than, say, Bengal can offer.
Yeah.
Belur Math and Dakshineshwar. Tell me, can I get a good Tamil speaking guide in Dakshineshwar? And why is it not available? This is where I think we are losing the game big time, because our focus is not on employment generation in the manner it is to be done. Now, Dakshineshwar, if it is having 10 Tamil speaking or Gujarati speaking, Bengali, Punjabi speaking guides, just 10 of them, it is enough. Gaya in Varanasi is more connected to the Japanese than probably we are, because of Buddha's connection. We go there, we just have a look at it and come back and say, acha hai, bura hai, whatever comment we want to do. But for Buddhists, especially in these countries, it is an umbilical cord that is connecting them to these places. You go there, you have some touts who takes and tells half-baked stories, and some of them may be genuine, and most of them are not. And unfortunately, the image of the country goes down. Industry requires dedicated planning. And once industry is put in place, automatic, whether it is tourism, whether it is textiles, whether it's automobile, employment generation will automatically happen. And India has more to offer to the world than the entire world has to offer to itself.
Absolutely. Very well said. Very well said. So, as we notice, there is uh, a dearth of adequate and appropriate policy making, resulting in disproportionate allocation of resources to training, uh, maintenance, and financial support to industries which require a proper administrative structure to make it happen. To make it
Yes.
happen. Right? Now, uh, this is from a macro level, from a
Mm.
governance level, that we expect such infrastructural support to come up, policy making support to come up, measurement of employment from each segment to come up. As of now, we only talk of 93%, 95% of Indian employment being from informal sectors, whether be it urban informal or rural informal. So we are essentially talking about that 5% or 7% who are in the formal sector. How to broaden this sectoral discrepancy to make it easier for informal sectors to get disciplined enough to be counted as formal sectors.
I would ask the question on the reverse.
Hmm.
Is it necessary to convert informal into formal?
In a way, yes. I mean, if measurement is not done, uh, 90% people are
In
informally
the
employed. I do not really know the pulse and the health of the employment scenario. I know only that 90% people are employed. But what is the level of employment? What is the level of engagement? What is the skill? What is the kind of quality of the output? As you say, Bangladesh being number one, ahead of India in textiles, mainly because we have not really been able to uh, inculcate formal procedures for evaluating the quality of the output, the quantity of the output, the quality of the resource allocation, the quality of training, and even the quality of ambassadorial activity to be done by the nation in order to make it profitable for a textile industry to be a global icon. Today, Indian cloth, how much does it carry? How much value does it carry vis-a-vis a cloth which comes from, let's say, some other country like China or Indonesia or Bangladesh? In fact, Bangladesh, I remember correctly, has been enjoying the most favored nation status uh, for more than 30 years now, 30, 40 years
yes.
almost, right? Which India still doesn't perhaps have with most of the nations. So that uh, actually induced the Indian textile industry to to engage in global trade activities through Bangladesh. Now that was another corridor which was developed by it. Now that is where the necessity of formalizing the policies and the other prerequisites so that the output is measurable, comparable, reliable. That's why it is necessary. Otherwise, well, nothing needs to be actually informal.
Okay. As far as India being given the most favored nation status, we have always enjoyed it with all countries. From the moment the WTO was signed, only thing as a least developed country, Bangladesh had a lower tariff as compared to us when entering into, say, America or Europe. But doesn't stop us from swamping Bangladesh in India. The problem is Bangladesh goods are entering India thanks to a very, very skewed treaty that Manmohan Singh entered with Bangladesh. So whenever people talk of Manmohan Singh as a great economist, I chuckle for these reasons. And that is why Bangladesh is now dominating India in India. It is not Bangladesh dominating India in, say, USA or in Europe. That's the worry. Now, coming to your question about formal informality, yes, there is always a cost and consequences attached to it. Now, most of the employment in India are in what is called, as Professor Vaidyanathan would say, India unincorporated, or what is called loosely called as the Bhagidari system. There is a small shop, Kirana shop, it employs Chintu or Mintu there. Now, to formalize it, to bring it under PF system or EPF system, or to give gratuity, bonus, and adhere to your labor laws or other things. Of course, human dignity is very important, and the child must not be employed. But that is how Indian society is. Unless you address the larger question of arranging the society, you cannot deal with this formalization, informal setup, or the employment generation part of it. And these are the people who are employing the roadside dhabas, the roadside kirana shop, the factory that employs people in textile or in cycle manufacturing or in automobile or in services. Most of the services that you have in India are in the informal sector. In fact, it would be formalized services would be only in the computer software zone. If you take it, otherwise, it is predominantly in the informal zone. Now, leave aside this formal informal definition part of it. There is a Manthan Singh Ahluwalia report that comes in the year 2000 or 2001 when Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. And even at that time, Manthan Singh Ahluwalia wanted to convert formal into informal into formal. Well accepted, well appreciated, well understood. But since then, or even before then and after then, we are still grappling with this question: how? How do we convert informal sector workers to formal sector workers? Formal sector workers will require large employment. Large employment means large capital. Large capital is corporatization of the entire economy. But and if it is corporatization of the economy, it is also corporatization of the society. Our society is still not yet ready for corporatization of the society. So we are refusing to accept corporatization of the employment or the economy. So till corporatization of the society happens in full measure, corporatization of the employment generation or the employment structure will not happen. Until such time, my view is we will have to live with a problem or a challenge that is social, predominantly social. But there is enormous scope for government to interfere, as I said, and that includes, and please let us, and we have also done one very fundamental flaw in our arguments, that we believe that employment generation is the sole responsibility of the central government. State government are virtually held at zero responsibility levels in terms of employment generation. State governments can also do, for example, as I gave you the example of your guides, tourist guides. Nothing stops the state government from giving training to people within their own states to take care of tourism. After tourism is the most eco-friendly foreign exchange generator, employment generator in a country like India. You don't have to be literate. You don't have to have any great skill sets. You require some basic knowledge that can be trained in 3-4 days of a particular temple or heritage site or whatever. and this can be quickly done. Even that barest minimum training is not being given. We see all sorts of nonsense being done. But the larger point is state governments are abdicating the responsibility in employment generation. This is a case in point.
Hmm.
If they are
Absolutely.
also they are also made accountable,
Hmm.
and we hold them singularly responsible for certain things. The problem with us is we want one magic bullet.
Mhm.
We want one policy, and from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, Kandla to Kohima, everybody must be employed. It won't happen. So unless we address technology, law, social, uh, constitutional, responsibilities, we look at state governments also generating all these things. If we don't look at it simultaneously, I don't think so we can generate employment so easily.
Great. But then, MRV, uh, it is a subject which we can talk on it for endless hours. And
Yes,
there's so much of dynamic changes taking place all across. And I think we would in future also sometime touch upon this and go into greater detail about what can be done for employment, because employment is a very, very vast subject.
yes,
Uh,
I appreciate.
Very, very vast subject. So we will do that. Thanks for having joined us, and I hope this series keeps bringing up such questions which we generally avoid to discuss in
Correct.
normal mainstream media. But these are very important questions in my view, and I think you also agree with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.